Happy 5th of May, our European Independent Living Day, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Mona and I work with communications and storytelling, and this is my colleague, Kristin, who is a political advisor. We both work for Uloba Independent Living Norway, and we are co-organizing the following hour and a half of lovely conversation with the Swedish Independent Living Institute, or ELI, and the network that we are all a part of, the European Network on Independent Living, ENIL. In essence, independent living means that disabled people shall have and will live free and independent lives, just like everyone else. We want you all to follow us on this journey in 3 parts. We will start by talking about the birth of the movement of ENIL, which is also the birth of a connection between people, organizations, and countries. We will then move on to the present situation, learning more about the lives of disabled people in the European countries today and the work that ENIL does within and beyond the European Union. Finally, we will discuss what is crucial right now and how you and I can contribute and be united in our common fight. And if this in any way sounds dreary or otherwise tedious, bear with us. We have some of our biggest profiles with us, ready to share their stories with you all. This year marks the 8th edition of the Independent Living Day, and ENIL has chosen to dedicate it to the idea of movement or mobility in a broader way. We will touch on both our freedom of movement and the restriction of movement that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought on the world. Before we move on, Kristin will fill us in on a few practical details.
Hey, am I unmuted now? Yes. Hey everybody, I'm Kristin, as Mona said. I also work for Uloba, and I've been looking forward to this for so long. Welcome. This is some practical information. The webinar that we're in now has auto captioning by Teams in English. It is also interpreted into international sign language. The interpreter will show in the window of the stream. In addition to the stream webpage, the stream will go out on Uloba's Facebook page and YouTube channel. It will also be recorded and available online afterwards. If you need to get in touch with us during or after the event for questions or feedback or comments or more information, then you might write to us in the Facebook event or the YouTube stream, or write an email to hla@uloba.no. This address you will also find on the stream web page. Back to you, Mona.
Thank you, Kristin. Well, we can start at the beginning. The European Network on Independent Living, or ENIL, is, to quote the webpage, an international forum for disabled people, independent living organizations, and their non-disabled allies on the issues of independent living. And in the beginning, the 5th of May was meant to be a day for protesting. Today, we've got with us Adolf Ratzka, a true titan in our independent living movement. You've lectured on disability and self-determination issues in over 30 countries. You've been recognized by the Time magazine, and you've been awarded the European Citizens Prize by the EU Parliament in 2008. Last but not least, in any way, you were there when it all started, when ENIL was founded in 1989. So to begin with, what is the story behind this day?
Yeah, hi everybody. Before talking about this day today, I want to remind you of how ENIL started. It was in 1987 when we had a 3-day conference in Cologne, Germany, on personal assistance and independent living. It was organized by the Center for Independent Living, Cologne, and among the speakers we had Judy Human, who then was still living in Berkeley. There was Horst Frehe, a German Green Party parliamentarian from Bremen. There was Lothar Sandfort, who was advisor on disability to the Green Party in the German parliament. From Sweden, we had Karl Grunewald, who'd been the driving force in the Swedish government deinstitutionalization of persons with psychosocial impairments, and I was there too. In one of the evenings, a few of us, over a beer, there was Judy, Horst, Lothar, and I, talked loosely what we could do about how to promote personal assistance and independent living more effectively throughout Europe. And I talked about my experiences with the biannual conferences on independent living for people with underventilation in St. Louis, Missouri. On those occasions, you meet regularly every second year, and you make friends with people in the same situation. Get new insights, you learn about new approaches, build coalitions for joint projects. And you realize you are not alone with your problems. There's nothing wrong with you. We are many, and together we can accomplish a lot. So at that time, initiatives and groups working for independent living in different countries were pretty much isolated from each other. And so I suggested we get organized. We work together, spread our message, grow in numbers throughout Europe, and get stronger, work for our rights together. And for this, we would have to meet regularly. So Lothar said he could try to get money for a conference from the coalition of the Green parties in the European Parliament. After all, he was very close to the head of the Green Party in Germany in the Bundestag, in the Parliament. And in my work at the Institute of Technology in Stockholm, I had compiled hundreds of addresses of disabled people and their organizations for my newsletter on accessibility, deinstitutionalization, and personal assistance. And as it turned out, Lothar did succeed in getting plenty of funding. He also managed to get us a huge room in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, including the simultaneous interpretation in I don't know how many languages, and rooms for everybody in the local youth hostel, with my addresses for sending out the invitation, and Lothar doing all the logistical and practical work around the event. We managed to get 72 persons with disabilities from over 20 countries coming to Strasbourg in April 1989. In my keynote in Strasbourg, which is actually on the ENIL homepage, I suggested that we form a flexible and flat network, not a hierarchical pyramid structure with elected representatives from each country. I didn't want us to build a big shell that would take a lot of resources to maintain. I wanted us to concentrate our resources on the content, on our work. In Strasbourg, I was elected as chairperson. And since we had no money for staff and since nobody else volunteered, I was appointed director and secretary and cleaner. I did everything. The office was in my study in our apartment. And with the financial support of Steel, the personal assistance user cooperative that I started in Stockholm earlier, we could organize meetings in Stockholm with invited guests and speakers from mainly Eastern Europe and the US. Now, to the 5th of May. In 1992, the first 5th of May, there was the International Day of Protest, as we call it at that time. The day was the idea, the initiative, and the hard work of two persons, Ottmar Miles Paul and Uwe Frebert, both living in Kassel in Germany. Disabled people, up to this point, and sadly still today, have been a forgotten minority, hidden away in parental homes and residential institutions. Our group was and is still undereducated, understimulated, overprotected. Ottmar's and Uwe's plan was to have demonstrations and events in as many cities as possible, all over Europe at the same time. The aim was to document the events, get media coverage, let everybody know that we no longer passively accept paternalism and oppression. We did not accept exclusion and discrimination in 1992, 20 years ago. We don't accept it today, and we'll never accept it in the future. Thank you.
So this is our day to actively say that we are here and we do not accept being put in a corner, as it were. Over to you, Kristin.
Yeah. I want to talk to welcome you, Vibeke. You're one of the 5 founders of Uloba and our Secretary General. And this year, Uloba is 30 years old. Mm-hmm. So during the last 30 years, Uloba has brought the concept of personal assistance into Norway and developed it. And today, more than 3,500 persons in Norway are leading a more independent life thanks to your pioneer work. What role did the international and European network play in establishing and developing Uloba, Vibeke?
Thank you, Kristin, and congratulations, everyone, on this day. I would say I don't know really if Uloba has existed without the international organization and network. It has played a crucial role. That's no doubt about it. And you know, Bente was the driving force, I would say, to establish Uloba. And she went to the States and she learned about the independent living movement. She was inspired by people there. She made friends. She made a lot of network. And she learned that they had the same challenges, the same problems. They faced the same discrimination as we did in Norway. And she brought many experiences and inspirations with her back to Norway. And I think her relationships to Adolf also was quite crucial in the way that she was inspired. And I know that she really looked to Adolf as a role model. And she wanted to take these all the things she had been taught and make it well as a ground platform in Uloba as well. So I think That is one of the main thing, the best thing with the networking, that one person can learn from another and take it along and get together with others and get strong in that sense. So the international network has played a huge role in the establishing of Uloba. And Uloba is, first of all, an organization who provides personal assistance. And we had a really tight connection to STIL, the Stockholm Independent Living, when we started. And of course, we learned a lot from STIL in the sense that we adapted a lot of their documents and translated it to Norwegian, and built Uloba on that ground as well. And I think also the most important is that the independent living philosophy was so clear and so obvious, and it made sense to us as well, and go in that direction. I think one of the problems in Norway actually is that we are based on this welfare system, and it tends to keep us disabled people as sort of sick people with special needs. And so that the independent living philosophy with the social model has been crucial to also developing Uloba as an organization.
Thanks, Vibeke. So, as you say, it's important to know each other and to be to know each other, to be a network, and to know more about the situation throughout Europe. We want to show you some greetings that we have received from people all over the continent. We want to start out with a video from Sweden, and then we're going to hear from our friends in Finland.
Of the pandemic. Hello, everyone. We are from Threshold Association, Finland, and because of the pandemic situation, we are working mostly from home. Situation is hard for many disabled people here in Finland, as it is in everywhere in the world. But we want to wish you all very happy Independent Living Day here from us all. So happy Independent Living Day from Finland.
My name is Rahila. Hello everyone. Happy European Independent Living Day. Uloba, happy 30 years anniversary. My name is Rahila Nafu. I'm living in Sweden and working in Independent Living Institute. Independent Living Institute in Sweden is a policy development center specializing in consumer-driven policies for disabled peoples, freedom of choice, self-determination, self-respect, and dignity. Our ultimate goal is to promote disabled people's personal and political power. Towards this end, we provide information, training materials, and development solutions for services for persons with extensive disabilities in Sweden and all over the world. There is an assumption that Sweden is a paradise for disabled people. Each and every right of disabled people are respected. But the reality on the ground is different. Disabled people in Sweden is struggling to assure their basic rights to get a support and service like personal assistance, accessible transport, adaptation of living environment and vehicles. In general, to get an independent life in Sweden. The challenge is growing and the possibilities is minimizing from time to time. Law and regulations requirements are becoming tougher and tougher for disabled people to enjoy their rights. Sweden is one of those countries trying to close institutions, but now the tendency is growing again to take it as a solution. People are taken to institutions without their willing. Instead of letting disabled people to decide on their own life, it's others, it's the policymakers who are deciding on their life. Sweden has adopted the UNCRPD and other human rights focused conventions and laws, but the implementation is not similar. The problem is not getting better, rather than worse from time to time. On the other side, the organization of disabled people are struggling to tackle the challenges, but their strength is not enough. The international cooperation, the partnership overseas are not strong as it should be. We believe that disabled in other countries are also living in a similar situation, more or less. The problem which disabled people are facing every day must be changed. The change is not coming by itself. It needs a struggle. Disabled people organizations and individuals have to work together in collaboration, in partnership, in solidarity. It's very important to struggle together to get a better solution and as quick as possible. To assure the basic human right of persons with disabilities, the persons with disabilities all over the world must work together. Happy European Independent Living Day again. Bye.
Thank you to our Swedish and Finnish friends and co-activists, describing a situation which I suppose that many of us can relate to. Now, Adolf and Vibeke, I would like to ask you a little about your common journey. You've already mentioned Bente, who is a person who has been particularly important to both of you, I know. She was one of Uloba's founders and is often called the mother of Uloba. Now, will you tell us a little about how the three of you came to know each other and how you have collaborated through the years? Adolf.
I met Bente in November '81 at a conference in Gothenburg about building in accessible environments. At that time, I was a researcher at the Technical Institute of Technology in Stockholm, and she was at the Norwegian Institute of Building Research. And she'd been very interested in designing what we in Sweden at that time called boende servicelägenheter, that is semi-institutional settings where people living each in their own apartments but shared common staff. And she presented that at the conference, and immediately afterwards I tried my best to talk her out of this idea. It was understandable in her situation because she'd been living with her parents. So moving out from the parental home for her was the main thing. But I said, why don't you aim a little higher? And told her about how I was managing. I had been managing California those 7 years as a student there, how I managed in Stockholm at the time. I was meeting her, how I was traveling, how I was having a pretty good quality of life with what I called later on personal assistance. And from then on, we met each other a lot of times. She would come with the parents to Stockholm visiting me. I was invited to her coming to Norway, Oslo. We started to meet at different conferences. Then she got the idea of applying for Fulbright to the US to get to know more about independent living. I showed her the video. A friend of mine and I was filming in the US on independent living. And that's how it started. And we not only became professional friends, we became personal friends. I mean, we used to talk about everything. And we were very good friends. And later on, when she and I got married, the two couples, we would meet a lot of times. And I remember fun things. Once we were in London at a conference that was getting too long, and she and I, we took off and went to a flea market. That was more fun than sitting around. And so we had many common adventures together.
Thank you, Adolf. Vibeke, how what has it meant? Because you have not only been, as you say, Adolf, you have not only been activists, but one becomes friends also. What impact has that had? Getting to know the people that you work with in the goals that you are achieving, Vibeke?
Well, for me personally, so my relationship to Bente was quite close, and we became friends as well. And I must say, I think it is important that you know each other, what you really stand for, and that you know each other's situation, because in that sense you are sharing experiences. And that was the thing Bente and I did as well. We were sharing a lot of situations, experiences. We faced some of the same challenges. And to me, Bente she became quite fast, quite important role model. And she told me that she saw Adolf as her leading star, and I saw Bente as my leading star, to be truth. And we also had many dinners. We went camping together, and we become very close. So we were always there for each other, and that's important to when you work together and you face all these different kinds of challenges from society. You need to stand together and be strong together. And that was what I felt with Bente as well. So she has been very important. And I was thinking, although when I first met you, actually I'm not sure where that or when that was, because we have been together on a lot of conferences, and well, we've been to several countries together in these conferences. I'm not sure the first time I met you. I don't know if you remember, but Bente was probably there, that's for sure. So, yeah.
Thanks, Vibeke.
And I can also say, Kristin, that I think some of the most important things we do in the network is, showing each other how things can be done, to be a role model for each other. And I think that is crucial to see that everything is, you can do things, and it also, you learn to get to know people in a way that is quite special. That means a lot. And you feel and you can experience that you have a lot of things in common. And when you have things in common, that will give some extra power and forces to, face all the challenges that we are facing.
This makes total sense. Thanks. Mona, now over to you.
Thank you, Kristin, and thank you, Adolf and Vibeke, for a lovely story of coming together as activists. Now we have two very interesting women with us. It's Kapka Panayotova from the Independent Living Center in Sofia in Bulgaria. She's one of the founders of the independent living movement in Bulgaria and an independent living leader. And we have Jamie, an independent living activist since 1993 and now the director of the Independent Living Institute and co-chair of ENIL. Jamie Bolling. Thank you very much, both of you, for being with us. Now, Kapka, can you tell us a little bit about how ENIL grew into the network it is today? For instance, what role has ENIL played for the Bulgarian movement and the work that you do?
Hello, everyone. It's so great to see all those familiar faces, which I haven't seen for more than a year because of the stupid coronavirus. But if I'm not mistaken, David Lega needs to leave for a reason. Probably he has meetings and other appointments. So I wouldn't mind giving the floor to David. And then Jamie and I share our experience together in ENIL. What do you think about that?
I think that if Kristin and David are ready, we are more than welcome to give the spotlight to them.
Okay, so I got it right from the chat box.
Of course, yes, we are more than happy to. So Kristin and David.
So, but I'm not giving up.
No, but we will hear from you later.
No way. Just leaving David before us.
We will hear from you later, Kapka.
Is it ready for me and David now?
David, remember, you have been given an advantage by ENIL and Uloba, okay?
Now, then, we will talk about a little about the status of Europe today. So later we will hear some more from ENIL about the work that they do to promote independent living all over Europe. A big part of this work, though, is influencing the politics of the European Union. And today we are as lucky as to have a guest, hello David, who you know the EU system from the inside. Thanks a lot for being here. Just a short introduction. You're a former Paralympic swimmer. You've been a deputy mayor of Gothenburg and second vice chairman of the Christian Democrats in Sweden. And now you are a member of the European Parliament. So will you tell us a little about how you ended up there?
Yes, of course. And thank you so much for giving me the floor now. And I will never forget that, naturally. So you will have my favors forever after this. Actually, to be honest, you will always have it anyway, because it's thanks to you and what you have been doing all these years, since we heard from Mr. Ratska before as well. Without those struggles, I would never have had the possibility of living an independent life. So thank you from all my heart for all that work. Because I was born in 1973 in Sweden with a severe disability called AMC, which means that I cannot use my arms at all. I have a very limited function in my legs. And thanks to the work with deinstitutionalization that you did before, I didn't have to go to an institution. I was probably part of the first generations who could stay with my family in Sweden in 1973 and forward. And thanks to your work, I could attend normal schools, regular schools for all my education, which means that I could study at the universities. I went to law school in Gothenburg in parallel. I did a lot of training, a lot of sports, because I I hated physiotherapy. It was so boring, which means that I had to find some other way to get active. So I went through every different sport, but I ended up as a swimmer and did 2 Paralympic Games in Atlanta and in Sydney 2000. So 21 years ago, I retired from swimming and started many different companies, businesses. As an entrepreneur, I traveled around the world talking about inspirational talks, but also on how to reach your goals. And in 2009, I went into politics in Sweden. And 2011, the 1st of January, I became the deputy mayor of Gothenburg, which is Sweden's second largest city. I did that for 8.5 years, and after that I was asked to be nominated for the European Parliament, which I have been doing for close to 2 years now. And it's been absolutely amazing and fantastic to be an active part of legislation and support systems for 27 member states and about 450 million people in Europe.
I'm very interested in knowing more about what kind of work do you do?
Well, the European Parliament is one out of 3 legislative branches within the European Union. So it's the European Parliament, it's the Council of the European Union, and it is the European Commission. And in the European Parliament, we are 705 members from all 27 member states. So in total, there are 705 MEPs, as it's called, member of the European Parliament. Sweden got 21 out of those 705. So I have one of those seats for this mandate, which is 5 years. So the European Parliament and the Union is the second largest democratic electorate in the world after the Parliament of India, which means that we affect those 450 million people within the Union directly, but also are a strong partner around the world. So I work in different committees. I'm a member of the Committee of Foreign Affairs, which means that when we see Europe as one unit, it's our relationship with other countries around the world. And I'm also a member of the Subcommittee on Human Rights, which means that we work extremely hard with human rights issues, for example, against China, Venezuela, Russia. We know the situation in Belarus. So it's very much international work that I do. And apart from that, I'm also a member of the Parliament's cross-party intergroup, it's called, Intergroup on Disability Rights, which ENIL is very active in. And I'm also chairing the intergroup on children's rights, which is for all children, including children with disabilities. That was my purpose when I started, to try to convince and persuade and put a light on disability issues, not only by working strictly with disability issues, but gain a larger confidence and then raise the issues about disabilities within that context when I have a broader confidence and support from other MPs who are not by nature interested in disability issues.
Thanks, this is very interesting. And shortly at the end, I would like to ask you, because as you say, you are working broadly and from the inside, while many of us are activists who are working very focused on promotion of disability rights. So how do you see the connection between those two kind of ways of working?
Well, I think it's vital. We need that connection and we need your input. Unfortunately, activists and lobby organizations have sometimes a bad reputation, and I think that's very unfortunate, because it's so important for me as a member of the European Parliament to get your input and your knowledge and your arguments. And for me, regardless, I mean, naturally with my own disability, I am more into the disability issues than many other MEPs, but regardless if it's children's rights or if it's if it's UNICEF or Save the Children or any other organization, I really need that that input to make a good job in my position. So, for example, it was due to and thanks to ENIL, other organizations, when I learned more about the institutions from before, that put me in the position when it comes to countries like Northern Macedonia, who wants to become a full member of the European Union, to go there and visit and see those horrible institutions in outside Skopje, which was without a doubt the worst things I ever saw in my life. How people with disabilities were treated and locked up, not allowed to exit. I went there as my first official trip as a member after the election in 2019. And just a month ago, I finally, after a lot of work inside the parliament, got the full parliament in plenary to stand behind my paragraph that's included in the report on Northern Macedonia, that for them to become a full member of the European Union, they need to close all their institutions. They need to put money into other solutions than institutions. They need to also have infrastructure for grouping areas and others, because they cannot go from institutions to personal assistance at once. They need to do their steps, but they need to do them a lot faster than other countries, and they need to start doing them now. So after 2 years of work, we finally got the whole European Parliament to stand behind my paragraph to say that they need to follow the UN Convention on Disability Rights, and they need to close their institutions, and they need to add money. Otherwise, I don't think they will become a full member of the European Union. And when we have done that, we can apply the same countries on former member states, or member states who have been members before, like Romania, like Bulgaria, even like Greece, who sometimes don't have come as far as we want them to. Then we can use the same argument. So finally, after 2 years of hard work, we are seeing a difference.
Thanks a lot for your views, David. It sounds like we need both the people working broadly and the people working very focused.
And what we do need is the communication in between. We need to have the communication in between us, and we need to continue to work together because we want the same thing. I want to be a voice for those who have the most trouble in getting heard. And this is my megaphone. But for me to know what to shout in it, I need your help. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Can I say a word before David leaves?
Yes, you may, Kapka.
Thank you. And I was provoked by your speech, David, which I appreciate very much, except for one thing. Just calling for the government to close down institutions is not enough for deinstitutionalization. Because what the Bulgarian government did was to close most of the big institutions, and they opened up twice as much, even much more than that, small group homes, which are as much institutions as the big ones. So I would really appreciate if you slightly change your message and start calling upon independent living rather than simple closure of institutions. And I'm telling that from experience. Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting the scripts. I'm sorry.
You didn't. Thank you so much for making that clear. But also, what I needed to do to get the approval of closing them, I needed to take it one step at a time. Because what I've been learning over these years is how politics work. And if I would force all member states to, in the same sentence, put money into independent living, the risk would be of not closing them at all. So I needed to do them in 2 steps. That means that I totally agree with you, but I also need to do this in a way to get the support for a sustainable solution for all these people living there. And to get that, I need to do it in steps. I wish that I could do everything at the same time. I wish that we could get support for personal assistance and independent living all over the union tomorrow. But for me to succeed, I need to understand the system. That's why.
Okay.
But let's continue talking about it, because I owe you one, as you said.
Well, yeah, okay. We can do that on a different occasion. I don't want to bother anymore the discussion as it goes very smoothly.
We are very happy to hear your interjections, Kopka. They are very, very valuable to us. Thank you so much for joining us, David. We hope to see you on another occasion.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go on to speaking to Jamie and Kopka, I want to introduce a new video from our independent living activists in Bosnia-Herzegovina.
Hello, my name is Fatma Bolic and I come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I am currently the president of the ENIL Youth Network Board. The situation for people with disabilities in Bosnia and Herzegovina is at an unenviable level, although there are shifts that have been noticeable in the last few years. We see and have the opportunity to work with young people who are eager to make changes. We are working hard on individual empowerment, but we still need to make additional efforts to strengthen the education system, the labor market,
I'm sick and tired
for
of this
non-formal learning, but also to change
closure of
prejudice
institutions
when it
which
comes to
doesn't close
attitudes
them
towards
ever.
people with disabilities.
New wrapping.
Unfortunately, the situation of the coronavirus pandemic has set us back a lot when it comes to visibility, advocacy actions, and movement. People with disabilities in Bosnia and Herzegovina have no form of support when it comes to the coronavirus pandemic. Additional confinement affects the mental states of most. Inadequate access to healthcare system, social protection, education system that must be maintained online. Most students from the villages do not have adequate technological support to be able to attend classes. This situation will pass. However, we must come out of this situation even stronger, so we can be able to create a new reforms of the law in order to make the world tolerated for all.
Thank you to the lovely Fatma from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Now we will talk to our lovely and powerful Kopka from the Independent Living Center in Sofia, Bulgaria, one of the founders of the independent living movement in Bulgaria, and Jamie Bolling, an independent living activist since 1993 and the director of the Independent Living Institute in Sweden, ENIL, and also a co-chair of ENIL. So, Kopka, you've already spoken a little about institutions and your views on that, but can you tell us, you're welcome to continue on that, but can you also tell us how ENIL grew into the network it is today? For instance, what role has it played for your movement, the Bulgarian movement, and the work that you do?
Well, my first real interaction with ENIL, like face-to-face interaction, took place in 1998 in Torino, Italy. And when there was an event organized by ENIL, and where I met Jamie, and I can't really believe that it was so long ago, Jamie. And I am sure that we are not that old, are we? But frankly, I can't remember the topics on the agenda. But what I remember very clearly is a room full of disabled people determined to be free and dedicated to help and spread the word around. And actually, one more thing I remember is that all these people were having fun, and I was having fun too. And well, there is one thing I will never forget. Jamie dancing and smiling and laughing, even though she was terribly sick. I can't remember, Jamie, what was wrong with you, but I remember that you had fever and you were sneezing, but you were still dancing there. And it was back in 1998, so long ago. Do you remember the Torino thing?
Of course I remember. I was sick, 39 fever, and but these people were all so much fun. We were meeting all these people who were working. It was a conference on personal assistance, which many of the conference were at the time. And it was great fun to be there, but it was also showing how dynamic ENIL was, with people pushing for their rights and pushing for personal assistance. So I couldn't stay in bed even if I was sick. So I remember that very well.
Oh, yeah, but it was so long ago. And actually, this was a sort of a turning point in my personal development as a disability activist. And it was followed by contacts with Adolf, Jan. I hope some of you remember Jan from Belgium. A while later, I met Bente and Vibeke and dozens of other disability activists, which really were like an enlightenment, life-changing experience for me. Well, I am disabled as long as I can remember myself. I got polio when I was a baby, and it was thanks to my parents that I went to school, to a mainstream normal school, graduated English language school, and never was allowed to go to a special school, which was a sort of a practice for most disabled children in Bulgaria. Then I had the chance right after the 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell down, I had the chance to get funding and postgraduate studies in the United States, where I had personal exposure to independent living. And I was shocked because I always felt that there was something wrong with what's happening to disabled people in Bulgaria and the countries from Eastern Europe. But I didn't know what exactly. So when I went to the States and when I saw what's going on there, I realized what is really wrong. And when I came back in 1995, I got a bunch of disabled people organized and set up the Center for Independent Living, which grew nowadays to a large and vocal platform of advocates for accessible environment, personal assistance, and deinstitutionalization. How did ENIL help us? Actually, if it wasn't for Bente, Vibeke, Adolf, Jamie, and the entire ENIL community, CIL wouldn't be what it is now. And the Bulgarian disability movement wouldn't be as it is now. It's not enough. It's still not strong enough. It's still not enough. The medical model is prevailing in Bulgaria and in many other countries in this part of Europe. But what we learned from Uloba was, and still, and all those people that I mentioned, was the most important and empowering lesson. And it is that independent living is possible. It's not just a fantasy. It's possible. And today, the independent living movement in Bulgaria is stronger than it was 20 years ago, but we still need to to build on. And we can do that only being a part of a larger community. Otherwise, it will take us another 100 years, and I can't survive that long.
Thank you, Kapka. I think I would like to ask you, Jamie, you are a part of ELI, the Swedish Independent Living Institute, and you've also been very active in ENIL. Can you tell us about what has been important to you in this journey?
To start with, if I hadn't met Ara Fratska and got engaged in steel, I wouldn't know what independent living is about. But it was independent living, as David said, through personal assistance. It allows us all to have our jobs and to be active and live in society and have families, as we all know. And yes, independent living in the movement showing that it's possible, but the fight is so strong. So role modeling from the beginning, empowerment, as everybody's been talking about, was so important. When I came into ENIL, I met a dynamic network with activists from all over the place. We eat, sleep, and we work because independent living is our life. Without it, we won't go anywhere, so it's very important. So between the empowerment, raising awareness about independent living, but working with networking, campaigns, projects, and role modeling, that's what makes us strong. And I need to take the opportunity because without Uloba, we wouldn't be as strong as we were, Ina, because Ulobas give both financial and moral support. And I guess the time of any to say thank you very much to that, and to you, Vibeke, who's there. And you also have been such a strong role model. I mean, Bente was the mother of Uloba, but you're the little sister taking it over. And we all have to go into our places, and that's why it's so important with this meeting today, because the youth, yes, Kapka, I think it was 1999, but anyway, time's gone so fast. And we know that we're all going to get older and slower. So we need this young group, and it's great to be here with the youth of Uloba today, promoting independent living. But there were the campaigns. I'll just take 2 minutes because I know time's getting short. The 5th of May was one, first protesting, but also being proud. We had the Stolthetsparade in Norway, which is also important. But at the EU level, there's the Freedom Drive, which started in Strasbourg, now in Brussels, where we gather together, meet, have trainings, march in the streets and scream and yell for accessibility, for personal assistance. And again, as Adolf said, it's important to come together, to meet our friends, make new friends, and to exchange experience of what we have in our countries so that we can all work towards better independent living legislations in our countries. And that's what we've seen through ENIL, more and more countries getting personal assistance legislations, which is good. I could talk a long time about so many things, but I guess I'll stop there. But thanks so much for the occasion to be here and for all being together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us, Jamie. And I was hoping that you would say something about Freedom Drive, because it says, the entire concept says something about how important the solidarity concept is for organizations like ours, because we need our own fight, our own sort of liberation, if you will. Before we move on, I would like to introduce our next video, and we have some lovely people from Iceland next.
Hello, friends in Europe. We are advisors at NPI Mistøen, a cooperative owned and operated by people with disabilities who have personal assistance and independent living. NPI Mistøen was established in 2010 and was in part established to fight for the right to independent living in Iceland. It is the only center for independent living in Iceland.
The implementation of personal assistance for disabled people in Iceland started in 2010 when the first 22 persons received personal assistance. In 2016, the right to independent living was ratified.
The confirmation of new laws about services for disabled people in 2018 marked an important milestone in the battle for human rights of disabled people here in Iceland. According to the 2018 law, disabled people have the right to independent living. The law states clearly that to act according to the law, the United Nations Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities should be followed in regards to services to disabled people.
Despite these milestones reached, personal assistance is still in the implementation process here in Iceland. For instance, the UN CRPD has not yet been legalized, but work is underway in the Icelandic parliament.
Today, about 100 persons have personal assistants in Iceland, and a little more than 50 of them are members at NPA-miðstöðin. There are also other types of contracts which are similar to the contracts of personal assistance but do not entail all the tools necessary for independent living. Although the number of people with independent living has slowly been increasing over the last years, there are still many who are waiting for personal assistance despite it being their lawful right since 2018.
We, the disabled people, are gaining momentum and making progress step by step. We have many associations of persons with disabilities in Iceland, and some, like NPA-miðstöðin, have a strong voice and are often consulted in matters concerning disabled people. There are also interesting projects underway. For instance, 100 ramps will be built downtown in the old part of Reykjavik in the next 12 months. Recently, it was confirmed that the Icelandic health insurance is legally obligated to cover much of the cost of equipment disabled people use for exercise and hobbies, but not only wheelchairs necessary for them to get around. This alone can increase the quality of life for many disabled people.
Concerning COVID and its effects, it has mainly led to extreme isolation for many. For NPA-miðstöðin's members, it has not resulted in less assistance except, unfortunately, in one case. Yet COVID has in all likelihood affected those more who don't have personal assistance or good support system. Also, many felt fear because of underlying diseases and their vulnerability towards COVID. Many were also fearful of the possibility of being without assistance should their assistants fall ill. Disabled people often felt marginalized since information distributed, especially at the start of the pandemic, did not include information that took disabled people into account. NPA-miðstöðin had to show much initiative to find and distribute information concerning infections control protocols, practical things concerning personal assistance during the pandemic, vaccinations, and more. We are hopefully moving towards a better time. Last week, many disabled persons and their assistants received vaccinations.
We look forward to continuing working towards a society where all disabled persons who want and need personal assistance will receive assistance without delay and thus gain independent living and continue our fight for human rights of disabled people. All in all, we are moving in the right direction.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to our friends in Iceland. Now, I want to welcome you, Miroslava Mima Ivanovic, and you, Nadia Haddad. Mima, you are a lawyer and a disability rights advocate from Montenegro and the co-vice chair of the ENIL Youth Network board, while you, Nadia, are a board member of ENIL and the executive committee of the European Disability Forum. Thanks a lot for being here. Will you, Nadia, start by introducing us to what ENIL has worked with through the last years?
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you for bringing us all together here and the opportunity to speak with each other. So ENIL has worked on several topics the last years, especially about awareness raising. We have just the Independent Living Day, we are on the 8th of it. We have the Freedom Drive, like usually. We also have, earlier, when it's about awareness raising, we participate at the European Disability Development Week and the European Disability Days. And each time is to put independent living on the agenda. When it's about policy, in the policy area, we have worked on the election, and we had a memorandum, and we try to raise awareness again about what's important for us and what needs to be changed and how all people could get access to the elections. We also do a lot about the freedom of movement, and we work on digitalization a lot in several countries and also within the European Commission. So we work also on capacity building by meeting our members, and we have regional meetings, but also by organizing study sessions for the young people, and nowadays webinars. And we have also another area we work on is campaigning. We had a big campaign about the European funds for all rights. That there is a lot of European investment and structural funds that can be used to realize deinstitutionalization, but we always notice that it's misused. Like in Hungary, instead of having a big institution of 500 people, they built 2 of them, 400 kilometers in the woods, and they say this is deinstitutionalization, and they are grouped with 50 people far away. Even the first institution was even better than the new one, who's supposed to be in the community. So we had a campaign about it, and we made a lot of complaints to the ombudsman. So we stopped, for example, some funds where it goes to Hungary and in Portugal. And we work also on research. We have a research area where we do a lot of research about, for example, personal assistant checklist. We are part of the Independent Living Research Network. And so each time there is something about, we try to see also how we can use the law as a tool to make our rights possible. And then we have a lot of strategic partnerships, like the European Disability Forum, the World Independent Living Network, CG, so the Jewish network, and we will work together with them on hate crimes. We had an advisory place at the FRA, the Fundamental Rights Agency. We worked also with ANET, the Academic Network on Experts with Disabilities. So we try to work with ENIL. We are a small group, we are a small staff, but they do a great job. And we have happily a strong board and strong activists that support us, like Afka and JB, that does a lot of work for us continuously.
Thanks, Nadia. Nima, Miroslava, what issues are ENIL youth working particularly with? And what was your way into the ENIL youth network?
First of all, I want to wish happy Independent Living Day to everyone who is watching us. And now I will answer your question. Actually, the ENIL Youth Network was founded in 2012 after one of our main activities, or one of our most important activity, which is study session, which we try to organize every year in the Council of Europe Youth Center in Strasbourg. Unfortunately, due to coronavirus, it was impossible to organize it this year. It was only possible to organize some online event, but these types of events are not fully accessible for persons with all kinds of disabilities. So we decided to wait 1 year and to actually organize another study session. We, besides the study sessions, we organize these, let's say, webinars, trainings, and other campaigns and other sort of activities which address most important issues of youth with disabilities, such as education, employment, personal assistance, inclusion in the society in general. And we try to, let's say, send some statements, some opinion in some important European or international days, such as Independent Living Day or Day of Youth, and so on. What was my, let's say, way into ENIL? It was I actually worked in one national organization of persons with disabilities in Montenegro, which was in that time, and it is still, the member of ENIL. And I applied for the membership in ENIL Youth Network, but the most important thing was my participation in the study session in 2018. And study sessions are great opportunity for gathering of youth with disabilities from all over the Europe, so they can speak about some mutual challenges and to hear about some very, let's say, simple and easy solutions which were conducted in other countries. They didn't, they never actually thought about those solutions. So study session is a place for making partnerships, networks, let's say friendships, to hear about new ideas and new solutions, and to feel that you can do something in your local community, but also in the larger, let's say, level, on European level, that you're not alone and just the member of your small town or country, but you can also influence the youngsters from other countries, and you can get and offer inspiration to each other. So then I decided to apply for membership in ENIL Youth Network Board, and since 2019 I'm co-vice chair of the board. So actually ENIL is working, let's say, through the Youth Network Board, and we are communicating via social media channels with our members, and developing activities in line with some feedbacks and our, let's say, sharing of information of our online meetings. The most activities are held online, but I would say that the study sessions are the main channel to maintain the chain of leaders in international independent living movement. So actually Youth Network is a great channel to maintain the disability rights and independent living movement, to receive new young leaders which in future and now will do what Adolf, Bent and others have done in so many years. So I want to, let's say, encourage all youth who with disabilities to apply for membership in ENIL Youth Network Board, because it is very open for new ideas, for new leaders, because everyone is a leader in his or her own life. So he or she can also be a leader in lives of others.
Thank you very much. I hope that everybody was listening carefully now, because this is actually an encouragement to engage in something very concrete. And as you hear, there are so many tasks to work with that ENIL and ENIL Youth you are engaged in. Thanks a lot. Now, I could have been talking about this for months, but now we'll have to go on, and we will see some more video greetings. One from my country, Norway, and one from Greece.
Hello, greetings from Norway. My name is Martine Evleisen, and I'm working as a political advisor in Uloba, Independent Living Norway, Uloba in short. We work to ensure that disabled people have the power and control in their own life with the same opportunities as others to make their own choices for equality. One important tool for achieving this is citizens-led personal assistance. This shall provide the opportunity to live a free, active and varied life in all areas of the society. However, many people experience discrimination from the municipalities that manage citizens-led personal assistance in Norway. Women and young people are particularly vulnerable from falling outside of the society due to the lack of hours of assistance. It is also a big problem that disabled parents do not get assistance to be a parent. Another problem area is that the CRPD has not yet been incorporated into the Norwegian law. In Norway, we have a guardianship law that violates the right to self-determination. In the autumn of 2020, representatives from a left-wing party submitted a proposal to the government to incorporate the CRPD into the Norwegian Human Rights Act. A narrow majority voted against this in March this year. And at last, how has the COVID pandemic affected the lives of disabled people in Norway? Well, many people with citizen-led personal assistance states that they are less social isolated and lonely now during the pandemic than before.
Thank you to our colleague Martina in Norway and Kamil in Greece. So we've now heard the story of ENIL and the intention behind our Independent Living Day. And we've also heard about the situation for disabled people in Europe. So the question that remains is a big one. What now? How do we continue to grow and develop as a network? And so I'd like to ask all of you that have been with us so far and that are still here, Adolf, Vibeke, Kapka, Jamie, Nadia, Mima, what are your suggestions for the future? We can start with Kapka.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that independent living and disability rights still need continuous efforts, despite the fact that we've got United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We have plenty of European laws and a lot of national legislation. Still, the disability rights are violated. Disabled people are kept aside. And as I mentioned earlier, all this deinstitutionalization concept got so twisted that actually closing large institutions does not result in deinstitutionalization, but in closing people in small group homes, which doesn't change a bit the quality of life, and the way that people are in control of their life. They are not actually. So what we need, well, there is one thing I cannot understand. How does it happen that the movement becomes weaker, poorer, and less money is available for advocacy and international connections? More money goes into services and their providers, which I claim represent a disempowering factor for disabled people. So this is something that we need to focus and make the situation reverse. Have more disabled people empowered, getting out of their homes, joining a larger movement in order to stay connected and fight together against the hijacking of our language. I bet everybody knows what I mean. Against funding for disabled people instead of funding disabled people to do what they want to do. And finally, I think as a movement, Europe-wide, and I hope globally, we need to fight for standards for independent living across Europe at least, and give a good example to the rest of the world as well. Because the standards for independent living are the crucial element that will give us the real tool in a combination with UN Convention to fight for independent living. And I hope this is something that I will be able to see in my lifetime.
Thank you, Kapka. Would you like to continue, Adolf?
I have a suggestion for strengthening activities within our network. We all do important work, of course, but often in isolation from each other. Instead of inventing the wheel over and over again, we can pool our resources and collaborate instead. To do this, I suggest we regularly, say once a year, describe for the ENIL newsletter the projects we're working on. In that way, people in organizations with similar interests and plans can contact each other, find partner organizations for working together or applying for money together, and for sharing experts. And there's another thing. As Kapka pointed out, we've got a lot of laws and regulations, and we got the fantastic convention that will soon end up in every hotel room like Gideon's Bible. But that in itself will not help us. We have to learn how to use all these legal instruments, if necessary, in court. In court. So I'd like to advertise our Disability Rights Defenders Network. We have a newsletter and a Facebook group for learning how to use these laws and for getting the skills and expertise that we do need to succeed in fighting the system in court on their own turf. Being in the streets and demonstrating there is nice and necessary. Lobbying is also necessary, but the power is in the courts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adolf. Jamie, would you like to continue?
Most things that I was going to say are already said, so I'll just repeat them. I agree with Adolf. The newsletter that we can all contribute is also joining the different networks. Adolf mentioned the DRD network. We had a personal assistance network. We have the network for the researchers so that we can find the competence of everybody and be able to use each other's competence when we're out organizing things, that we organize common projects and common events. As we said, sometimes you think, are we going forward or we're going backwards? We have these beautiful legislations, but I have a fear I'm going to end up in a group home if something were to happen to my husband, who has to give me half of the support I get, even if I have personal assistance. So I mean, the threat is really there. So it's not, we need to be stronger all the time, more people to be active and to have common projects and to work hard together, as Adolf and Kapka both were saying. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. And over to you, Mima. What are your thoughts?
Actually, I want just to say, don't give up, because very often persons with disabilities become tired in facing so many barriers. So don't give up. There are so many chances. Adolf mentioned one of my personally most interesting and powerful and lovely things, such as legal proceedings, but there are also media, advocacy campaigns, and so on. Don't give up. If you solve problem in your life, you will, let's say, make a way for other persons in your community, persons with disabilities in your community, or you will inspire other persons with disabilities in another country to do similar thing in their life, and you will help not just yourself but also the other persons with disabilities. So there are many barriers still, but we don't have to give up. And if we realize one right, there are so many others which we have to realize, not only because of us and because of our life, but because of lives of other persons with disabilities and new generations. So don't give up and be active.
Thank you, Nima. Nadia?
Yeah, I would say let's join forces. We really need to join forces and try to get track. How is it possible that still we have more than 1.5 million people living in institutions in 2021? Why does regular people find it normal that with tax money they still keep small group houses finance? It's for their money. It's with all money that they do it for all the working people. So I think awareness raising should be something more in common. Say it's not normal to keep people segregated. Normal special schools are not normal. Sheltered workplaces are not normal. We should go back. Maybe if you need to use again sensitive things, it's no harm. But you really need to join forces and say that stop those things. It's not normal. Let us be part of the society like all the others. And then the support that we need is something that we can claim together. It's not only about going to court. It's also about people should be aware that that possibility is there to go to court. People should be well informed. We need to still emancipate all those people with disabilities themselves. Between our own movement, we should agree on the same thing. What does we mean by living in the community? It's not going out to the market with volunteers, but that you can decide by yourself how you live. And even despite different cultures, despite different economic conditions, we should also go in conflict with the service providers who now provide personal assistance. They find so fancy ways to get funding instead of us. So I think it's really, we need to be a bloc, but we can only be a bloc if we agree, if we do it all together, and that we are joining each other. For example, we have national councils that doesn't represent us at all because they don't have the same vision of independent living as us. So we should overwhelm them. And now we have the new disability rights strategy. They are just using and misusing independent living like they want. So it's up to us, the movement, the real movement who started this up, to protect ourselves and to protect what we want in society. So I will end up again with the same sentence as I started. Let's join forces and be a big bloc against all those against us. And thank you for bringing us all again together.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Now, to end this session, we will ask our own Secretary General, Vibeke.
Thank you, Mona. I think that whether or not we can make the changes that we are working for, it very much depends on ourselves. And I think it's important to, as Nadia says, join forces. And we need to be growing the network and be stronger together. And I'm really glad to see all the young people who is, attending the network now and taking over, because we won't give up, but we are getting tired. We are getting older. So people need to come up and join our forces. But I think the main thing is maybe not only coming together and join forces, because we as disabled people, we tend to, be as people expect. We tend to be as the politicians and the government expect. And when they make solutions, they will keep us down in their sort of solutions. So we need to use the knowledge that we have. We have the knowledge of their philosophy. We have the knowledge of social model, and we have this knowledge. And if we can use this knowledge, we will make some changes. But we need to be have more sessions, more webinars together. Learning disabled people themselves must learn this knowledge, must know this knowledge and use it. So I think that's important if we really want to make some changes. And we need to keep on promoting independent living philosophy. Otherwise, we won't make any changes. We can stand together, but if we don't use the knowledge that we have, we won't be able to make the changes that we really want and that we really need. So yeah, otherwise things has been said, and I'm just very glad we have people coming up from the youth, and we need to be even stronger than we ever have been before. Yes. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you all. We will move on to the next video clip, which is our colleague in Greece, Camille.
Hello, my name is Camille Gungor. I am originally from Poland, but I live in Greece. So I'm asked to answer two questions. The first one is, how is the situation for disabled people in the country I live, so in Greece? And yeah, it's not the worst in Europe, but it's not the best in Europe either. For example, we don't have personal assistant. People are still going to institutions. The accessibility is very challenging, but things are improving. Hopefully, a pilot personal assistant program will be happening soon, and there are already discussions about the DI. And yeah, I mean, awareness is raised, and more and more things are being inclusive day by day. But we have still a lot of things to do. Regarding the COVID and the impact of the pandemic to the disabled people, yeah, compared to other countries, we are quite lucky ones. Of course, we had people who unfortunately died, especially in institutions. But you know, the country didn't have that many casualties as other countries. And yeah, we basically we had to stay home, so we didn't do much. We had some issues with support services, and you know, with mental health as everyone else. So that's it from me. Happy Independent Living Day.
Thanks to our friend and colleague Camille from Greece. Okay, all good things must come to an end, and soon we will have to leave each other for now. I hope that you have had learned just as much as I have done through these hours, or 90 minutes actually. And I want to convey a big sincere thank you to Kapka, Jamie, Vibeke, Adolf, David, Miroslava, Mima, Nadia, all the others who have contributed here in different ways, the production crew and the interpreters, and Mona, and all of you who have spent time together with us here today. Before wrapping it all up, I want to shortly mention again that if you want to get in touch with us for feedback or questions or more information, how did the accessibility work? Do you want more webinars? Do you really feel like doing something? As you hear, there are a lot of tasks and your engagement is utterly needed. Then please write to us on the email address of the landing page, which is hla@uloba.com, or on one of the comment sections on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you're sitting there now, feeling very much like learning more, knowing more, and engaging more, you can continue to celebrate the European Independent Living Day. After this, at 16 o'clock, ENIL will host their own webinar where they will show the movie Silenced, the hidden story of disabled Britain, followed by discussions between activists. And you can find the details about the arrangement on our streaming webpage now. Moreover, if you're engaged in ENIL's strategic plans for the next years, you're welcome to join one of the regional consultations that will take place next week. We will put the link with the information there as well on our landing page. Or you can also contact us to be connected with the right people if you're interested. Now, finally, we want to show one last video greeting. And this one is from the European Ombudsman, who is already mentioned today, Ms. Emily O'Reilly. Thanks again for being here, everyone. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Good afternoon from Strasbourg, and thank you very much for asking me to speak to you on such an auspicious day and on such an important topic. As European Ombudsman, I have to ensure that the EU institutions comply with their obligations under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is a responsibility to which I attach enormous importance and which I approach in many different ways. The Ombudsman, as you probably know, is one of the standing members of the EU CRPD framework, and I chair the framework for 2 years until the beginning of this year. The role of the framework is to ensure the promotion, protection and monitoring of the CRPD by the EU administration. My principal work in this area is naturally based on individual complaints that I have received, but also through inquiries or initiatives that I have launched into more general areas and not necessarily based on a specific complaint. One particular area of concern, which goes to the heart of today's theme, relates to the use of EU funds to support projects related to institutional care. As the UN itself has pointed out, EU funds should not be directed towards such institutions, but should instead prioritise deinstitutionalisation and the right of persons with disabilities to live independently in the community. I have dealt with complaints about the role of the Commission in monitoring the use of EU funds, following revelations that EU funds were continuing to be channelled into such institutions in certain member states. In the context of these inquiries, I sought to emphasise to the Commission its responsibilities in this area and the need to ensure that EU funds are used only to promote independent living and deinstitutionalisation. Building on this, at the beginning of this year, I opened a more general own initiative inquiry into the role of the Commission in ensuring that national authorities use EU funds with a view to promoting independent living for persons with disabilities and for older persons, and transitioning away from residential care institutions. To help maximise the effectiveness of this inquiry, I will be working with national ombudsman offices throughout the European network of ombudsmen, which I coordinate. The inquiry takes place against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had devastating consequences for people in institutional care. In some member states, many institutions were locked down with devastating consequences. This has to serve finally to refocus minds to make deinstitutionalisation an urgent priority. I also look at how the institutions apply the CRPD in their daily work. I receive complaints covering issues such as the accessibility of websites and recruitment procedures, reasonable accommodation of staff needs and matters related to care and to carers. I have tried to push for the EU administration to achieve the gold standard in terms of accessibility and equality, and I will continue to do so. I am also carrying out an own initiative inquiry against the backdrop of the pandemic into how the Commission accommodates the needs of staff members, whether for home office facilities, the specific rights and needs of carers, or continued access to support and treatment. One of the possible outcomes of this may be to draw up a set of best practices for the EU administration as a whole. But my work is very much reliant on the crucial role of civil society in terms of drawing attention to problems and highlighting solutions. As such, I want to encourage you to keep up the good work and to know that you are most certainly making a difference. Thank you.